All right.
Hey everyone, welcome to the PmP End of Month review for October. It's only going to be myself and Jim here today. Um, it's a bit of a shorter one as well, so hope you enjoy it. We're doing Monsters and Machines. Got a lot of lovely entries to get through, so we'll just get right into it. So starting off, got Sang, painted up that War Boss on Wall Crusher Guy using acrylic paints and zenithal and contrast. You say contrast? Or
Yeah.
violet? Yeah. And plaster stones. So yeah, I really like the look of this guy. I like the palette, the way the beast is kind of it's kind of a slightly cold gray, and then you've got the orange on the rider, and it's also it doesn't have the head you've used. I prefer that one because it doesn't have the armor on it because it means there's kind of a triangle compositionally between the rider and the two bits of armor on the beast. So you can kind of see that very clearly, the orange kind of triangle in the frontal view, and it makes it a lot easier to look at. Um, I think that the contrast, it's working well. You could definitely see there's like, especially I really like on the armor panels, the way you've got the kind of blended orange and yellow with the kind of then the under shading showing through. It looks almost like watercolory. It's very cool. And then you have like nice little bits of freehand up on the rider as well to give them more attention with the dags and the flames and everything. I think it's really cool. And this is a piece where often the rider gets kind of lost behind the beast, but that's not happening at all. So great work. I really like, as I said, the blending on those little details. I think the shading in terms of like all the little crevices on the beastie, all its little wrinkles. In some of them, there's not really much shading in the kind of cracks. Like it looks like maybe say like up on the upper parts of its arms, uh, you haven't got any of the contrast kind of pooling happening. So you might want to go back over that and just put on an extra layer to make sure, because obviously it's going to flow down to the lower point as gravity kind of draws it in. You can see that's happened. You could also try using oil washes are like extremely good for that to just literally stain just the little crevices if you want a different way of doing the same thing. And I think the plaster rocks look really good. Um, like they look as good as anything I've seen out of a kit or anything like that. And the only thing is he's got a little bit of floating hand syndrome. It's normally floating foot syndrome, but it's probably not that noticeable on the tabletop. But if we look at him from the frontal view or the first picture anyway, you can kind of see his hands just sort of suddenly end, where that's obviously where they're normally in contact with the base, but you've got him positioned differently, so he looks a little bit odd. Like you can kind of tell that his hand is meant to be resting on something. So you could just put like another piece of rock jutting out, like at an angle, to let that sit kind of as it would on a more normal base. But I think it's very minor, to be honest with you. Generally, I like the whole overall look of the piece. I think it's really nice. Great job on your walk crusher there. You have anything to add there, Jim?
Yeah, loads. So I also picked up, was one of the first things I noticed was the hands. So for me that was a bit more of an issue because that is a very, very aggressive straight line. So yeah, just ramming something underneath there to flatten that out would be a great. There's also a mold line on the other hand, on the other finger there. I think that's a mold line. I've not actually painted this, but it kind of looks like one. So ding for that. But generally, yeah, as Matt said, I think you did a pretty awesome job of rendering it. It's got nice light to darks across it. The contrast is giving you good blends, so you're working with it well. There's a couple of areas where it looks like it's pooling though. So if I mean and zoom in, like some of these on the panels on his arm here, they do look a little bit stark. I wasn't sure if that's supposed to be like rust on here or whether it's shading. I think it's shading. So yeah, just smoothing those out a bit would help. Matt's already mentioned about the recesses and the scales of the beastie. You went to great lengths on the yellow armor for the rider, but not so much on the black armor, I noticed. So you're clearly capable of doing it. So just bringing out some of these volumes, just exaggerating these with some greys would be a really, really nice addition to the black. And then I've got that the eyes don't look like they've been done. Sorry if they have, and it's just a picture. Um, but you could definitely make a little bit more of those, I think. And also some flesh tones in the face as well. Advanced apologies, by the way, if you can hear just how bad my son is screaming right now, because I definitely can, and there's nothing I can do about it. Um, and then, yeah, as Matt said, with the rocks, they're pretty stunning. Incredibly smooth transition between the interference colours in there. You got some muds and some greens, algae, different shades of green. It's not all the same. It's all very nice. So yeah, great job saying that looks really, really cool. Thanks for submitting that, and we'll see you again in the next one. All right. Next up then is Harry Algren, looking for general feedback on this one. So I know that there's some issues on the build and the neatness. Any suggestions are welcome. What to do to push it to display quality. So let's just flick around it once because this is very nice and very tidy. So I don't really spot anything like build issues wise with it, to be honest. So I think you're all good there. I didn't spot any. Maybe there was one mold line here on this arm and on this arm. I think that's pretty much the only thing I picked up. But you know, they're not huge. That could be hidden quite easily with weathering, if you wanted to. Speaking of weathering, that was one of the things that jumped at me was the directionality of some of the runs of rust. So if I flick back to that picture and zoom in, so you've got two rivets next to each other here. One of them it's running straight down, and the other one is kind of running off at like a 7 o'clock angle, and so is this one. So it's a little bit like, why are they running in different directions when they're kind of right next to each other and in the same orientation as his other hand? So that was a little bit of a and then also like, why are these ones so corroded and rusty, but then the other ones right next to them have nothing whatsoever? So just like the story's not quite gelling together with how old this thing is. If there was like a little bit of like deliberately painted in damage, like which you've done beautifully on the rest of the hull, if there was some obvious damage, we'd be like, right, that's where the water's getting in. That's why those ones are rusting and those ones are not, because this is still lacquered up here. That would help resolve it a lot better. The same story on the other side, obviously. So yeah, you know, just doing like a scratch or a ding or a dent, or like breaking that knob off or something like that, just to help gel the story together would be helpful, I think. In general, I really like the lighting on it. Much darker lower body than upper body, so that's coming across really, really nicely. I love what you've done with the weathering, like this chipping, scratching, indenting, and that all looks really, really good. So nice work on that. A bit of a challenge for me was the blue of this lens. I think that would work a lot better if that was orange, because that's a nice contrasting color with the rest of it. This blue's a little bit sort of desaturated, pale, washy. It's not really selling as a bright blue light. So having that as orange would also be a really nice way to draw attention right in the middle where you want it. So just food for thought, compositionally, you need another color just to really strike or create that really striking focal point. At the moment, the focal point for me is this gold that's across here because it's so much brighter and it's got great contrast in it. So then I had on the base, down on the feet, it looks like you've built up the goop and the mud to come up over the feet, rather than it looking like the machine has sunk down into it, if that makes sense. So perhaps next time, you've got to obviously build it up, yes, but then just smoothing that area out over a broader surface, I think would help that make more of the impression that it's sinking down into the ground. And then finally, I had that the metals on the gun barrels and these sort of canisters and, you know, bits and just the silver metals, really, they could do with a little bit more contrast in them. That is to say, deeper shadow, really, because they look a little bit one tone in a lot of places. So yeah, just forcing some shadows in there and painting some deliberate secondary reflections in there. Interference as well, believably, off the green, of the hole, would take it a lot further as well. Nice work on this blue gem as well on the top, by the way. That looks great. So yeah, there you go, Harry. Your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, a lot of the same. It's a really nice looking piece. Really well done. Kind of armor and weathering, and overall, like very competently painted. Um, I think, like Jim said, the islands at the front, it's a bit like less good than the rest. I think it'd look probably better if you did it like that gem on the top. Just make it like not a light, like a faceted thing. It does make sense that it's just kind of white because like that's what lights like look like during the daytime, but they don't look particularly good. The arms, like where the gun barrels come out, look a little bit monochrome compared to everything else. Like some more weathering around the joints of them. Like you got the kind of circular panels that are white and there's bits of rust coming off them, but then the actual metal bit coming out of it just looks like a solid metal color. And then the smokestacks on the top, and also actually the front of the main gun barrels. It'd be nice to have some like scratching or chipping or smoke in a light color, just so that it goes from like because they're fading out to dark and then just stopping. And then if you had a light color on the end, that kind of it makes it more readable. I think though, in terms of like pushing it up towards display, the place for the biggest amount of gains is definitely the base, because it looks kind of like a fairly standard gaming base, and very obvious like tufts that are tufts. You can tell by looking at them, and also the color choices. Like there, it's a lot of the same colors you've used in the model, and the kind of model kind of blends into the base when you look at it from certain angles, which in some ways you kind of want, but in other ways maybe you don't. So if this was on like a desert base, it would stand out way more. And then you can also do stuff with the base where you have like, the land area is fairly bright colored, and then the water that's running through it is much darker, and then the model is brighter. So you get the same kind of light to dark to light kind of contrast going on. That just makes everything snap into focus and makes it look a little bit more appealing. Whereas the moment, like it is kind of realistic that it's fading away into the background. Um, but for a display piece, we're looking for something that's more kind of punchy and fantastical a lot of the time. And I think that's what you've done on the upper carapace of the machine, and everything there looks really great. And just to have similar amounts of attention paid to the base would definitely go a long way in terms of taking it from sort of high tabletop to display.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a solid point, actually. Like when you're talking about display, there's no reason, like it's not blending in with an army. You're not forced to paint like a swampy base, but I just think you're probably right in saying that swampy bases aren't like that attractive to the eye, and they don't give you as many opportunities to make something really striking and visually impressive because it's just a muddy mess.
yeah.
So
And as
that's
well,
a good
like your
point.
display, like its purpose is to be looked at. So you're displaying it on this terrain. So you pick something that will work well,
Yeah,
like just like any piece of fantasy art, they're going to pick the kind of characters in the terrain to go together, even though that doesn't necessarily make logical sense. But yeah, great work. It's a really cool looking machine, and obviously has a lot of work put into it. So thanks a million for submitting, and look forward to seeing more from you in the future. Then we've got Michael Zito with his Cthulhu bust. Uh, Pretty cool. Lots of very vibrant colors on it. It's a very interesting take on this. A lot of times people just go, it's black green Cthulhu, and then try to figure out, uh, how to make that more interesting. Whereas, if he's an octopus, he can be whatever color he wants. So looking for feedback on light, shadow, color combinations, and tonal variation. So I'll go with the light and shadow last. I think the color combinations are really nice. I love the kind of orange and yellow, and then the pink and purple. Like I think it works really well, and then the kind of like shell bits that are stuck onto them, it all looks very like cool, interesting undersea kind of thing. And then the tentacles have that kind of creepy, like almost like intestine look to them, which then I think that works very well as well. And I love the and then this kind of liver spotting on his head. So he's got a really cool kind of like sort of too familiar, makes you uncomfortable kind of look to it, as well as being a very fantastical monster as he should be. The tonal variation I think is good as well. Like the yellow isn't all solid yellow, and then it kind of blends into the orange places, and the same with the pink to purple transition. Apart from on his abs, which is also kind of where the light and shadow kind of comes into it. In that, like if you look at the skin of his abs and his chest in general, it's very yellow with a kind of grayer tone in the shadows, and the kind of the recess shading looks really good, but it doesn't have a kind of a volumetric shadow because you know if he's lit for say from the front, then like his abs at the side should be darker. You got a little bit of shadow under his armpits, but like his whole head, the way he's standing, it would like the whole front of him, if he's lit from above, which he appears to be, that should be generally much darker. So kind of if you have, say, your head goes up to like 9 out of 10 for brightness, then if it's the shadows and torso, you want to have some contrast there, but you don't want to go the whole way up to your brightest bright for the tips of his abs, and certainly not for all of them. Maybe you can have it like a few places it kind of picks up to your brightest highlight, but you kind of seem to have it evenly distributed all throughout. Um, Apart from that, like that's the only like main pointer that I have on the piece. I think it looks really cool. I love the like weird ear things that you're not sure if they're ears or not, and I think it's a really awesome take on this character. Jim, do you want to add anything on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Lovely, smooth finish. Very, very good. No issues with that at all. Looks great. With the lighting, I kind of struggle to have a focal point on this. Although it's all very, very nice and you could look anywhere and enjoy it. It's a bust, so you've got to exploit the size of it and the scale of it to really, set like an ambience and a setting to make this really, really pop. This is nothing wrong with what you've done, but just taking it further. So if you like take, for example, the abs at the bottom, they're sort of the same brightness and intensity as what's on top of his head. So again, what Matt was saying, but it's balancing the focal point of the piece across the whole thing. So if you had the head brighter, not only does it give you the added interest of the visuality of it, but it also is going to generate a focal point for you. And when it's a face, generally the most attractive thing to us is eyes, because we're humans and we're attracted to eyes. And this is humanoid. So our brains are already trying to kind of find the eyes. So with that, I thought, although these are very, very nicely painted eyes, and I love how you've put in different pupil shape depending on the shape of the eye. So like the outer eyes have got like a vertical pupil, and then the inner eyes have got a horizontal pupil. I thought that was a beautiful little detail in there. Very, very nice indeed. But I think there was an opportunity for a different iris color here. Iris colors, so you could push it more like to I don't think you want to go purple because it would blend in. I'd go more to sort of like tealy cyany blue, because that's going to give you a lovely color triangle with the yellows and the oranges and the purples that are already there. So again, just an idea, because there's nothing particularly wrong with how you painted the eyes. It's just an opportunity to make it stand out a little bit more. And generally, the only other thing that's not really been talked about is maybe you could gloss wash parts of the tentacly things to make them look wet. Maybe, if you wanted to. That's the only other thing, really. It's gloriously smooth, very, very nicely done, and great variation across the whole thing. So, and a very sleek, chic plinth as well. So, congratulations on that, Mikhail. Cool, Dr. Painting Minis. I hope that helps. We'll see you on the next one. Okay, Mark Clifford next with Gazcol, looking for advice on NMM. First time tried it on a big model for all the armors and the steels and the copper. So yeah, we'll start with the NMM then. So the best area of contrast for me was on this cowl above his head. That's got the best level of contrast, but it's got probably the least best level of smoothness to it. So you've got kind of the if you then compare that to the claw, that's smooth, but it hasn't got the same level of contrast as the other one. So you've got both the fundamentals of it. You just need to amalgamate the two together in all cases. Probably the most successful bit of the NMM in general, I'd say, was the where's it gone? It's probably from this angle here on this claw on the inside, because that's kind of the roughness to that is believable because it looks like a sort of serrated metal. So that's really good. The golds are pretty good. You could probably just push the highlights a little bit further in some places. And then the coppers, to be honest, I think that thing was supposed to be copper, but it's a bit flat. And maybe these like heat shields on top of these vents on the exhausts again, but just looking a little bit like they need more volumetric contrast in them. So the blue I think looks pretty damn good. You could push the highlights in some places and bully the shadows right down in areas where it's, these shadows here on the front, which are actually quite lit, are pretty much the same as this arm, which is away from the light. So just going deeper towards black on the shadows would really, really help. The battle damage is needing some black lines above. It looks like there might be some there, but they're just not stark enough. They have to be like super dark to really sell. And then there's some areas where there's clearly not, so that could just be like a chipping. So yeah, look, there's a nice dark line, and then white under it. So it is there in some places, but some of these speckly bits around here, they're just not quite stark enough, I don't think, to really sell as damage. Then I think he was on about the OSL as well. So the OSL needs some occlusion shadows. That is to say, here, am I zoomed in? Yeah. So these shadows need to go a little bit darker from where it's lit by the fire or the explosion that's coming from this side of the model, to where it's fighting the zenithal light naturally happening on the model. So the shadow needs to be a little bit darker. And then also with the OSL, you need to pick out the edges of the metals with a brighter highlight color, something that's as bright as all this. Yes, it's further away than all this that's on the base, but the materials on the base are nowhere near as reflective as the actual metal that's up here. So that would still catch super, super bright highlights. And the same for up here on the copper. And like this edge down here. So that all needs picking out as like a super bright highlight, almost as bright as this, maybe just as bright. But the overall tone of it, I think, is pretty good. Like it's pretty successful on this goblin guy here that's on the floor. So I think the OSL is a pretty good stab. I'm not sure if you said if it was your first attempt at OSL or you might have done this a few times now, but yeah, just deepening that shadow between the cast light from the light source and the normal zenithal light would really, really help it pop. And then deepening shadows that go behind, so like in here, that behind this rock could all be super dark, and up here under this leg, all this knee pad would be really, really dark as well because it's shadowed from, the light's coming up. So it's like a landmine's gone off or something. It's kind of the story I'm getting. So yeah, some deeper shadows under here as well. But in general, I think it's a pretty solid paint job. It's very crisp and clean. It's separated quite nicely. You could deepen some of it, like some of it around the teeth and that. But yeah, pretty solid stuff, Mark. Matt?
Yeah, similar to Jim, I had trouble finding anything that I would say was copper on it. It was the same things I picked out, and I was like the globe on the back and the kind of plates on top of his exhaust pipes, but they also look kind of like they could just be rusted metal.
Yeah.
Like copper is obviously it's much more like you would need to make it shinier than that. And then the gold or brass bits, the yellower metal, they're well depending on what way you want to go, they might be a bit too yellow. As in like brass and gold and polished bronze and things like that. They are like yellow is their main color, but it's not quite as like a Ferrari kind of yellow. Unless you're going for kind of a particular style, which I kind of feel like you are with this piece, that there's a very sort of cartoony slash sort of looks like Borderlands kind of style where you've got lots of like little lines and dashes and hashes everywhere. It looks very like kind of stylized. And I really like that. I think it looks really cool. And I think it works well for orcs that he's got this, he is like a cartoon villain effectively, and then you've got him painted up like this, very stylized kind of armor and everything on him. You want to kind of go pick a lane though, in that like it looks really good on the claw. It looks convincing, and it also looks kind of like exaggerated at the same time. and then the armor in some places it looks more like kind of semi-realistic lighting, and then you've got some of the lines and dashes are fat in other places. So you kind of want to basically pick which one you're doing, and then just go for that the whole hog. Because then you've got stuff like this, like dangly little green thing under his exhaust pipe, and that doesn't have any of that kind of stylized scritching and scratching on it at all. Um, so you end up not being sure which one you're going for. But I really like the cartoon look. That's what you're going for. And then the one thing that on this piece that I think could benefit from is the basing grot guy is really cool. Like, but he's as well painted as Gazgul himself, and he's kind of sitting in front of him and like attracting loads of attention away from Gazgul's face and down to like the just down here. I don't know how relevant that guy is in game or anything. It'd be kind of cool to have him on his own base, maybe somewhere else, to be like, oh, he's Gazgul's mascot, without him kind of being there and interfering with the kind of composition of Gazgul himself. But I think they're really cool looking pieces, both of them separately, and they look pretty cool together as well. But I don't know. I almost kind of, I almost kind of prefer the basing grot because he's just got such a great expression, and he's got that big banner, and he looks like he's kind of in charge, and Gazgul's behind him. But anyway, it's a great looking piece. I really love like all the work you put into it, and he is. I don't really play 40k, but I really like Gazgul Traka, and I really like what you've done with this model. So next, Matt, Wall of Text. You can tell I was really sleepy when I was painting this. So yeah, it's a
uh,
dinosaur. I have a
it's
new army.
it's a dino that you were working on for ages. I remember you posted this
Yeah, ages. Yeah.
weeks or months with the smoothing
Yeah, there
out.
was a lot of life started getting in the way for bits of it. So
Yeah. So you know what you said. Test for a new army. Don't want a high standard, just playable. More interested in the base than the figure. Any thoughts on the conversion work? So I know how much work you put into the smoothing of it, and I think that's pretty successful. For what it needs to be, for what it wants to be. There's a couple of scales that are like peeking out from some places, but I don't think they're a huge problem. You could have lent into it a little bit and made them look like little like wounds or something, but again, for the standard, it's not really much of a problem, is it? So the definite eye drawing, the eye is drawn, sorry, mostly to the skink. So nice work with that, and infusing that, those color choices down into the skin a little bit. And I love how you did this really subtle patterning on his back as well. That looks awesome. It kind of looks like a brindle pattern, with just like the horizontal stripes going away from the back. So I'd say that was a great success. The straps though didn't look like they had as much love put into them. So a bit of separation and shading on those would go a long way. Obviously, most of the effort, it looks like it's gone into the body of the dino because it's the biggest part of the thing. And the base was wicked. I loved that. Super, super. I saw this drippy thing you did on Instagram. I was like, oh, what's that going to go on? And then when it popped up here, I was like, there it is. Is that like a brush hair or a bit of dental floss or
it's fishing
something?
line, ultra thin fishing line.
Fishing line, yeah. So yeah, that looks wicked. I would maybe snip out if it's possible. Is it glued down into the water or like resin?
It is, yeah. So it kind of connects the water to his toe. If that
Yeah.
makes
So
sense.
would you be able to snip out one of the bits of string and it would stay there because it's
I
connected on the
think,
floor?
yeah, I think basically because there's kind of like two drips, so I'd have to lose one of them. But yeah, like you could do that. Um,
I was thinking between the two drips, so you'd
yeah,
have.
I think if I do that, then the lower one will just fall over, if that makes sense,
All
because
right.
there's nothing then holding it up. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Right.
yeah. So that's why I didn't. But yeah, it probably
Ah,
might
yeah.
be better. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it still looks really cool. Really awesome. Then I spotted there was a little bit of dry brushing that looks like it happened on the reins on the handle bar thing.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
that could be washed to pick out the recesses that are in it. And then I wasn't entirely sure on what material the headdress on the skink was meant to be, whether that was like a bone or a gold.
Yeah, that was me being like, I should do this up in like NMM gold, and also being like, I don't want to have like my army in MMM gold, and just kind of stopping halfway and saying, fine, it's yellow now.
It's yellowy now. But yeah, classic Matt O'Brien transition from blue to purple, infused very smoothly. And yeah, I think it looks great. This is going to be a whole army of these
Yeah, I
Seraphon.
painted another 24 little dudes recently on their little square bases.
Oh, they're the old models.
They're the new models, but I put them on the old bases.
Oh, sorry, yeah, old bases.
Yeah.
Yeah, my brother had an army of lizard men a long time ago. It doesn't paint anymore, but I wanna get back into them just to give him some paint his
Yeah.
old ones again because we were like 11 and 12 and didn't know how to
Yeah.
fucking use a brush at all. But yeah, it looks great, man. I look forward to seeing the rest of the army. It was really cool.
Cool. Cheers. All
Right.
right, and then we have Kragnos. You want to go first?
Um,
Or should
yeah,
you
I'll
just
go.
went?
Yeah, I'll go again. That's fine.
Yeah.
So, Alexis Bonner, Kragnos ruling the Cruel Boys army. Thanks for the advices and the time. You're welcome, Alexis. It is a joy and a pleasure and a privilege. Nothing really in particular, just general feedback. So, cleanliness, crispliness, all very, very nice. I love the variation that you've got in the skin. There's a lot of life in that skin. It looks great. Like the scarring, the highlighting, the shading, all looks brilliant on the flesh. The metals have very, very nice weathering on them, so that's all believable. It's selling as like this coppery, bronzy type material, all of a similar sort of age and weathering. So I really, really like that. I love the variation that you put into the hair. That would have been all too easy to just go black, dry brush grey, done. But you've done a really nice job of bringing some colours in there. A little bit close to the tones in the skin, but I don't think it's too much of an issue because it kind of gives him this, like, he's sort of got like a red downy hair all over his body, which would be quite believable. So that was really cool. I wasn't sure whether the highlighting on the horns was the actual light from the photo or whether that's painted on. So take the benefit of the doubt, and I'll say that yeah, the horns look great, and having the sheen of light across, and then caught again on this like return edge of the horn is a really, really nice pick out of the light. So great job there. The photo's a bit blurry to really make out the weapon and the shield on that one, but if we flip over here, it's looking much better with this like epic power stance. And again, just looks great. Lovely level of contrast in it. Shadows in the right places. It really stands out. It's hella smooth. I think it's great. And then when you look at the army, I recognise that guy from in the back. We reviewed that a little while ago. I've just realised that swamp creature from in the back.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that. So, yes, this is a lovely example of how to bring in the colours that you've got in the rest of the army, but make it more of a focal point. So, like all these colours that are in, like the shields and the hairs and the weapons that are sort of in the army, and the skin of this beast as well. But then drawing it up to this massive, it looks like a display army, to be honest. It looks great. So, yeah, love the use of colours and how you've exaggerated it on the centerpiece. Brings loads of attention, elevating him up as well above the rest of the army. Yeah, sick, man. Looks wicked. Love it. Great job, Alexis.
Yeah, I really, really, really like this guy. Especially the face. I love the way you've got those deep shadows there, and then he's kind of lit on the top, almost like in a film. They'd have an extra light to shine on your face just to pick it out. It looks super, super good. And having those kind of same tones in his hair and his skin and everything just kind of unifies everything. Base, similar to your previous guy, base is super good, and it's a really good example of, you've got a really vibrant kind of green down there, but it's in this little circle and it's under him, and it makes this like conjures this whole scene of like the light going through the trees maybe, and then illuminating him in the middle. Um, and like he's one of, I think this guy, I've seen a couple of versions of him, and he's very, very busy. But this one is very readable and very like you want to look at his face, and you kind of your whole eye is drawn into that kind of central column, and up towards the top, and you kind of tell what's going on a lot better than a lot of versions of this I've seen. So great work on that. The only little pushback I'd have is that where you have some things coming together, like on the like the big necklace thing, if that had maybe some shadow on the lower part of it to kind of separate it from him, and the same with kind of the shield in a couple of places, just because they look kind of like be the word for it, kind of like they're
Conjoined.
floating. Like, yeah, like well, essentially that's the whole thing is that they are literally not like if I was wearing a big necklace, it would be kind of pushing into my skin a little bit, kind of thing. So if you can kind of make it sit down a little bit better, but that's only a very very minor thing to be honest with you. Of the old accoutrements, which he has too many of to begin with. But yeah, really great. And like the whole like, is it inside of his nose where he has nose rings that are done in like that kind of verdigris color because they're obviously damp all the time, and the blood and the teeth and everything. It's great. It looks like a little piece of fantasy art on its little diorama base. So fair play. Putting that effort in, and it looks like the whole army has had a huge amount of effort put in. So thanks a million for sharing it with us. Yeah, hopefully that's of some use to you. But yeah, it's nicely enough done that we don't really have that much feedback apart from that. Great.
There's not much to criticize, really, is there? It's wonderful.
Yeah,
It's really
good job. We love it. We love it.
Send us more. We love it.
Yeah, do that. We want to see the rest of the army. Go on, they're monsters. Large scale, yeah, sure, whatever. Submit the whole army. We'll fit it in sometime. All right, so that takes us to the end. It was a nice, easy month for us. Thanks a million for submitting. If you've watched the video and you want to say it, if you liked it, if you didn't like it, leave us a comment. Let us know how you got on. If you're interested in submitting your own work to be reviewed, submissions are open now in the PmP group on Facebook, so just head on over there. And this month it's large scale busts and things. Got a few really nice entries in there already. So look forward to seeing some more as Alexis has already submitted something. I just saw that. There you go. So yeah, thanks very much for sticking around. And as always, we'll see you in the next video.